They turn my sons into abominations.
Alright, so this is The False Heritage of the Raptors by 40K Theories. This is a Patreon request by Griffin of Might. We're going to go ahead and check this out. Now, the Raptors originally were a project, essentially after Corvus Corax's Raven Guard was wiped out on S1 5. Their numbers are so low, it was almost extinction for them. Probably less than 1,000 left. Now, what that they knew of, there were more that was spread throughout the galaxy. But what wound up happening was Corvus went back to Terra and attempted to gain the technology to rebuild his legion. And the first attempts at this were called the Raptors. And due to the Alpha Legion, things didn't go so well. In any case, I'm going to go ahead and hit play on this, and hope you enjoyed as much as I'm probably going to.
The Raptors are a loyalist chapter of the Adeptus Astartes created during the course of the Second Founding. The chapter's history is, somewhat paradoxically, both utterly glorious and unbelievably tragic. For while the Raptors have achieved countless victories against the enemies of man, they have also sustained an equal, if not greater amount of misfortune and loss over the millennia. Not only would the chapter be pushed to the very brink of extinction on more than one occasion, but they would even lose their very homeworld during one of the earliest Black Crusades of Abaddon the Despoiler. As a result of the many hardships endured by the chapter, the Raptors would, over time, become increasingly pragmatic. While the Raptors are officially documented as adhering to the tenets of the Codex Astartes, the chapter itself only abides by its teachings in the loosest possible sense. Despite acknowledging that the Codex is an important, tried and tested guide in regards to military tactics and strategies, the Raptors nonetheless maintain that the Codex should be treated only as a guide, as opposed to the quasi-religious doctrine that many other chapters often regard it as. Because of this, the Raptors, unlike the majority of Codex-compliant chapters, will bend or even outright break the often strict and overly rigid rules of the Codex should the situation demand it, instead choosing to place a greater emphasis on adaptability and tactical flexibility.
Which makes sense.
This in turn has resulted in the Raptors becoming highly unconventional by the standards of...
What is this? Is he using camo?
The Adeptus Astartes, even to the point of applying Warzone-specific camouflage to their armor, weaponry, and even their vehicles, a tactic which other Space Marine chapters are known to dismiss due to it being perceived as cowardly. The Raptors are also known to favor stealth and hit-and-run tactics, dealing as much damage as possible to the enemy and slipping away before they can retaliate. While other chapters may look down upon the Raptors for their methodology, it has proven to be undeniably effective. Within Imperial records, the Raptors are said to be descended from the ranks of the 19th Legion of the Legione Astartes, the Raven Guard. According to legend, the chapter was founded by aspirant members of the Raven Guard Legion who had avoided the events of the Istvan 5 drop site massacre due to the fact that their training upon the Moon of Deliverance had yet to be completed. While the chapter itself appears to be named after the Raven Guard Legion's Raptor project, there is some debate as to whether or not the founders of the modern-day Raptors chapter were somehow connected with the Raptor project itself.
Seems highly unlikely. Most of the Raptors that actually came from the Raptor project, most of the Space Marines that came from the Raptor project, there was only a few successful batches of them. Very few, as a matter of fact. I think only maybe a handful of Space Marines actually were brought about because of the Raptor project. The rest were just screwed up beyond all recognition.
Like other Raven Guard successors, the Raptors not only share a similar preference in their methods of waging war, favoring guerrilla tactics as opposed to pitched battles, but they also share a number of key physical traits with their primogenitors. Thanks to the unstable nature of Coraxian gene seed and the resulting genetic deficiencies contained within, the warriors of the Raptors chapter not only lack a functioning mucranoid organ, rendering them incapable of producing a waxy secretion to protect their skin from extreme changes in temperature, but their melanchromic organ also appears to be defective, resulting in the chapter's warriors developing deathly pale skin as well as dark hair and eyes. Somewhat surprisingly, however, the Raptors, unlike other chapters descended from the 19th Legion, have access to a fully functional Betcher's gland, an organ that allows an Astartes to produce an acidic saliva.
This is something I didn't know.
As to how the Raptors were able to seemingly retain the capability to produce this particular organ when others of their gene line could not, none can truly say. Some have speculated that the chapter was able to somehow restore the necessary zygotes within their gene seed stocks, whereas others have suggested that the gene seed of the Raptors had been split away from the bulk of the Raven Guard before the Legion had lost the ability to produce the Betcher's gland. But some have suggested a more outlandish possibility. Could the reason behind the Raptors' retention of the Betcher's gland be due to the chapter being a Raven Guard successor in name only? Since the Raptors are officially listed as a second founding Raven Guard successor chapter, the odds of them being truly descended from the gene line of Corvus Corax are indeed incredibly high, if not all but a certainty. However, there is a possibility, albeit a minor one, that the current incarnation of the Raptors chapter is not the same chapter that was established during the course of the second founding. The reason for this particular train of thought is due to the fact that, according to Imperial Armor Volume 9, the Raptors chapter was repeatedly reported as being utterly destroyed, or at the very least declared missing in action at some indeterminate point in time during M37. If the Raptors chapter was indeed destroyed, then it's possible that an entirely new chapter could have been founded, inheriting the name, color scheme, and heraldry of the original Raptors chapter, but all the while drawing their gene seed stocks from an altogether different source.
Alpha Legion?
While such an idea may sound fairly implausible, it is important to note that Coraxian gene seed, as detailed within the first iteration of the 8th edition Space Marine Codex, has experienced incredibly high levels of genetic degradation and deterioration over the millennia, forcing those chapters descended from the Raven Guard to utilize the purer and more stable supplies of gene seed drawn from the Terran gene vaults when creating new Space Marines. Because of this, which in turn would also appear to imply that supplies of Coraxian gene seed are gradually dwindling over time, the High Lords of Terra may have instead chosen to utilize the gene seed stocks of another legion entirely with which to re-establish the Raptors chapter. But if this were indeed the case, and that the Raptors are in truth not sons of the Primarch Corvus Corax, then from which of the other first founding legions could this modern-day incarnation of the Raptors be descended from? Of all the original Space Marine legions, only one is shown to display physical characteristics that are in any way similar to those exhibited by the Raven Guard, the 8th Legion of the Legione Astartes, the Night Lords. After all, as detailed within Index Astartes Volume 2, those implanted with Night Lord's gene seed will over time develop incredibly pale skin, while their eyes will become an oily black in coloration, traits which are incredibly similar, if not outright identical, to those exhibited within the gene seed of the Raven Guard. Unlike the Raven Guard, however, the gene seed stocks of the Night Lords are described as being incredibly pure, as well as demonstrating a high degree of stability, exhibiting little to no signs of genetic degradation or mutation. If the Raptors chapter were created through the utilization of Night Lord...
Yeah, because essentially at this point, if you're a Night Lord, you're already crazy enough without things going wrong with your gene seed.
Lord's gene seed as opposed to that of the Raven Guard, then this could very well explain as to how the chapter was able to retain the use of the Betcher's gland organ when other Raven Guard successors could not. In addition, it is also worth mentioning that the Night Lords also made frequent use of specialist jump infantry known as Night Raptors, which the modern day Raptors chapter could very well have taken their name from if they were indeed created utilizing Cursian gene seed, although there is little in the way of actual evidence to support this particular notion. But if the Raptors are indeed a Night Lord successor chapter, as opposed to being descended from the Raven Guard, then why do the Raptors lack the mucranoid organ when the Night Lords themselves retain it? This could be due to the simple fact that the gene seed stock of the Raptors may have simply begun degenerating over time, perhaps even to the point of experiencing its own unique set of zygote deficiencies. After all, chapters of differing genetic lineages can share a number of overlapping flaws within their gene seed, even though the exact combination of flaws and deficiencies are ultimately different from one another.
That's true.
For example, both the Raven Guard and Imperial Fist chapters lack functioning Betcher's glands within their respective gene seed stocks. Although the Imperial Fists are still capable of producing the mucranoid organ, while the Raven Guard, unlike the Imperial Fists, have retained the use of the Susan membrane, an organ which allows an Astartes to undergo a state of suspended animation. As well as this, a number of chapters known to have independently developed a number of genetic defects which do not appear to correspond to any of the pre-existing flaws exhibited by the first founding legions. The original incarnation of the Soul Drinkers chapter, for example, were known to have sported an overly active homophagia, an organ that allows a Space Marine to relive the memories of the recently deceased by consuming their flesh, resulting in the Soul Drinkers experiencing such sensations with a greater intensity than other chapters. As such, it's not entirely outside the realm of possibility for the gene seed stocks of a figurative Night Lord successor chapter to over time mutate and eventually lose the ability to produce one or more of a Space Marine's unique organs. Or perhaps...
This is true. It's not the first time it's ever happened. It's not the second or third time either. So it would make sense, but I still lead towards the Alpha Legion as a possible solution to this as well, because it's the Alpha Legion and they're wearing camo, and the Alpha Legion is pragmatic, but they also wear teal, and now I'm confused.
Perhaps the Raptors, instead of being a Night Lord successor chapter, are indeed descended from the Raven Guard, but that their gene seed had been, for lack of a better term, contaminated by Night Lord's genetic material. While this may seem incredibly unlikely, it is worth noting that at least one loyalist Night Lord, a warrior named Kasati Nuwan, had fought alongside the forces of the Raven Guard as an honorary yet unofficial member of the 19th Legion during the course of the Horus Heresy. However, prior to the Battle of Yarant, Nuwan, along with a number of other loyalists who had fought alongside the Raven Guard, would be dispatched to the Imperial Throne World of Terror in order to aid in the defense of the Imperial Palace. While it currently remains unknown as to what became of Kasati Nuwan following the events of the Horus Heresy, if he had indeed survived the Siege of Terror, it's entirely possible that he could have been officially inducted into the ranks of the Raven Guard prior to the introduction of the Codex Astartes, before going on to become one of the founding members of the Raptors after the Space Marine legions had been broken down into smaller chapters.
This could be true.
If this were indeed the case, and Nuwan had retained his own Cursian gene seed as opposed to having his progenoid glands removed and replaced with those of the Raven Guard, then it is theoretically possible that his original progenoids, after being harvested, could have somehow tainted the gene seed stocks of the Raptors, which in turn allowed the chapter to retain the use of the Betcher's gland organ. Admittedly, however, there is little else to support this particular possibility. Whatever the truth may be, the Raptors will nonetheless continue to embody the teachings of Corvus Corax by delivering swift and silent death from the shadows.
like a bird.
What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.
Pretty decent. I agree with a good bit of it. Main things being that, you know, it's a common thing for Space Marine chapters to not share certain gene seed similarities with their parent legion, but most of the time it's not a organ that begins to function again. It's another organ that fails. But in any case, that was the false heritage of the Raptors. I have had a feeling that the Raptors were going to be very similar, because for whatever reason, I don't know anything about the Raptors chapter. But I had a feeling it was going to deal with Corvus Corax just because of the Raptor project. Now, I wish Corvus Corax the best of luck in tracking down Lorgar in the warp. In any case, I will catch you guys next time.